Even with reports of up to 30,000 killed, Iranian-born activist Dr. Amir Hamidi tells CBN News the uprising continues and springs from the heart of the Iranian people.
From Azerbaijan to Balochistan to Kurdistan to southern part of Iran, from Tehran to Tabriz to Mashhad, I hear one voice, and they want a regime change. They want a freedom. They want a normal life.
Hamidi says the regime has enlisted foreign mercenaries to break the rebellion.
There are growing allegations that Tehran is leaning on allied militia from Iraq, Hashd Sha'abis, and Fatimiyun and other proxy networks to intimidate and attack Iranians because some elements of its own forces hesitating, fracturing, and refusing to fire on their own people.
Are you actually saying, as you referred to, actually some of the military refusing to actually fire on the protesters?
That's what I'm hearing, because they are falling apart inside their military forces because they see their own family in the street. They see their friends and their neighbors on the streets. And then my understanding, some of them are hesitant to fire back on the people.
This Iranian woman, whose father is part of the regime, risked her life by calling in to a talk show. It's been devastating to see the carnage that's been coming out of Iran for the past 3 weeks now. Joshua?
Yeah. Well, the internet has been shut off. Communication has been so sporadic. So absolutely. A few days ago, of course, though, Chris and I had a great opportunity to interview human rights activist Goldy Gamari. Here's an excerpt from what she shared with us.
Goldy, I wanted to ask you, what can be the consequences of this, if the regime does fall? What would be the consequences, first of all, to the people of Iran?
Well, freedom. We would finally have freedom after 47 years. We would finally be free from these savage Islamic terrorists who have been occupying us for the last 47 years. We can finally have a normal country based on the principles of democracy and secularism, like we were prior to 1979. The other thing as well is that we can finally stop being a sponsor of terror or being occupied by a sponsor of terrorism, right? Because prior to 1979, Iran and Israel were allies. And so we're actually looking forward to rekindling that allyship. That's actually one of our top priorities in the transitional plan for when the regime falls, is to reestablish and normalize relationships with Israel.
Goldy, could you double click on that? I know you were born in Iran. What are some of the misconceptions people have about Iran before 1979 or before the revolution?
So some of the misconceptions people have is that it was an authoritarian dictatorship and like people weren't free, and they like to say bad things about our beloved Shah of Iran, but the reality is those are all lies that have been propagated by the Islamists and the communists in order to justify overthrowing Iran and taking over in 1979, very similar to the propaganda and lies that they put out about Israel. It's the exact same thing. So the communists and Islamists like to paint themselves as the freedom fighters. Meanwhile, of course, we know that these freedom fighters are in fact terrorists. So I would say that that's a big common misconception. Another common misconception is that Iranians are Muslim. We're not. Prior to 1979, perhaps, some people just kind of identified as secular Muslim, but the reality is that today, less than 20% of Iranians identify as Muslim, and this revolution, it's not just about overthrowing the Islamic dictatorship. It's about getting rid of Islam and getting throwing it out of our country, basically, because we're Iranian, we're not Arab. We have a completely different culture, a completely different civilization. Just like the Jewish civilization, we're indigenous to the land of Iran, and the history of Jews and Iranians goes back thousands of years before Islam was invented.
Yeah, Goldie, one of the things that seems about this revolution is that the people are rallying around Reza Pahlavi. It seems like in the past, some of the opposition groups have been disorganized or not unified. Is this marks this revolution that people are rallying around Pahlavi to come back and at least be a temporary leader in a transition?
Yes, absolutely. So I think that's one of the defining features and defining factors of this revolution is that everyone has rallied around His Royal Highness Reza Pahlavi, the Crown Prince of Iran. He is the only one that we trust to transition Iran from a totalitarian Islamic dictatorship to a functioning secular democracy. And, people in Iran are only chanting his name, Reza Pahlavi. They're sharing photos where they're holding up images of his face on camera so that people outside can see who they're fighting for, and young people in Iran are saying we are willing to risk our lives if it means we can return our king back to Iran.
On a personal note, Goldie, if I may, how are you feeling watching what's coming out of your home country and what's being done right now, the abuse of your people? How are you feeling?
It's difficult. It's difficult because we know how brutal the regime is and how brutal it has been. But Iranians, we're very brave. We're very strong. We have, we're an ancient civilization that has survived for thousands of years. And so as difficult as it is, seeing the bravery of Iranians in occupied Iran and how they're just, willing to give up everything for freedom, that gives me energy. But more than that, we have received so much love and support from people around the world. People in Israel, people in the United States, people across Europe, South America, like everywhere that I can think of, there are people who are tuning into my live stream, sharing their love, sharing their support, rooting on for the Iranian people. And that gives me a lot of hope, and it's giving all Iranians hope, because now we know that unlike previous times, we're not alone anymore. We're not alone. The whole world is behind us, and the whole world is cheering for us as we overthrow one of the most evil dictatorships to have ever been created.
With a message that help is on the way, Iranians are looking for U.S. intervention. The USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Task Force is on the way to the region, but there are some reports Trump has decided not to intervene.
The truth is, only President Trump knows what he's going to do, and a very, very small team of advisors are read into his thinking on that. U.S.
Ambassador to the UN Michael Wall says the U.S. supports the Iranian people risking their lives for freedom.
Well, this is our message. President Donald J. Trump and the United States of America stands by the brave people of Iran. Period.
The delay so far by the U.S. is disappointing to Iranians, but some analysts say President Trump sent similar messages before attacking Iran's nuclear sites last June. He also needs time to put military assets in place. If the Iranian regime does fall, many believe it would be a game changer of historic proportions. Exiled Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi explained on his Facebook page how Iran would be different.
In security and foreign policy, Iran's nuclear military program will end. Support for terrorist groups will cease immediately. A free Iran will work with regional and global partners to confront terrorism, organized crime, drug trafficking, and extremist Islamism. In diplomacy, relations with the United States will be normalized, and our friendship with America and her people will be restored.
Restored relations with America would be a sea change from a regime that daily calls for death to the U.S.